All right, so the rules for using stealth in 2014 was notoriously bad. In fact, they're so bad that I'm not even going to try to explain them right now because they were just, in many ways, really, really difficult to understand and to use. And a lot of tables just ended up going by feel or by house ruling. So, luckily, the Dungeons and Dragons team has now had, 3 years? Or 10 years if you count from the start, to make new stealth rules and really perfect them and make usable stealth rules, which will be coming out in the 2024 Player's Handbook. And they haven't done that great of a job, I'm sorry to say. So yeah, in this video, I'm gonna break down the new stealth rules, the rules for hiding in 2024 Player's Handbook. And we're gonna talk a bit about why I think they're maybe even worse now than they were before. So yeah, without further ado, let's just dive into it. First, I'm gonna read the rules. You'll also see them here on screen. I've grabbed them from Treant Monk's stream, whatever. So, hide action. With the hide action, you try to conceal yourself. To do so, you must succeed on a DC 15 dexterity stealth check while you're heavily obscured or behind 3/4 cover or total cover. And you must be out of any enemy's line of sight. If you can see a creature, you can discern whether it can see you. On a successful check, you have the invisible condition. A note here, we'll get back to the invisible condition later. Make a note of your check's total, which is the DC for a creature to find you with a wisdom perception check. And then we have a parenthesis here from Treant Monk, so this is not in the book. This requires the search action. Continuing, the condition ends on you immediately after any of the following occurs. You make a sound louder than a whisper, an enemy finds you, you make an attack roll, or you cast a spell with a verbal component. Okay, so to really understand what we're dealing with here, I'm gonna break this down to the 4 steps that it essentially is. The first step is that you have to be heavily obscured or behind 3/4 or total cover and out of any enemy's line of sight, and then you take the hide action. The second step is that you succeed on a DC 15 stealth check. The third step is that if you succeed, you are invisible and a creature finds you if it succeeds on a perception check versus your stealth check. The fourth is that the condition ends if you make noise, attack, cast spells with verbal components, or an enemy finds you. So what are the issues with this approach? Firstly, you have to even contemplate making a stealth check, you must be out of any enemy's line of sight. Not just the enemy or enemies you're trying to hide from, but any enemy. Let's say that we've captured a goblin scout, we've hog-tied it, we've gagged it, and we keep it in our camp behind the rocks, and then we're peeking out over the rocks to ambush the goblin vanguard as it approaches. They don't know that we're here because their scout never returned, but the scout is behind me, eyes open, seeing me. I can't hide. By the rules, of course, obviously your DM can always say, hey, that's really dumb. You can hide, but as written, the rules would forbid us from doing that because we have an enemy that can see us, even if it can't alert anyone, even if it's in a completely different place. You don't even have to have a goblin in your camp. You could also have a wizard scrying on you from 100 miles away, but if that wizard is your enemy, you can't hide, even from completely different creatures. Same goes for in combat. I want to hide behind a bush to gain advantage on the ogre that's over here, but there's another ogre over here that can see me. It's fighting my ally. It doesn't have the time to shout out. It doesn't really care that I'm behind a bush. It's busy doing other stuff, but because it can see me, I can't hide from the ogre over here. Just right from the get-go, I think that the phrasing any enemy's line of sight is really, really bad. Next problem. As part of the hide action, I must succeed on a DC 15 stealth check. Doesn't matter the circumstances of whom I'm hiding from, DC 15 stealth check. So if I'm hiding from a red dragon, which has 25 passive perception, still a DC 15 stealth check. Let's say that I'm hiding from a half-blind, deaf old cow by a noisy waterfall, still the same DC 15 stealth check. That just seems wild to me. Now, passive perception was always a bit awkward. Like, it wasn't maybe the greatest design in all the places it were used, but especially and specifically for hiding, for stealth, it was great because it allowed me to make a stealth check and then compare the DM would do that for me. I'd say, hey, I got a 17. And the DM would go down his list of enemies and say, yeah, you hide from those 4, but this guy over here, he has more passive perception, so you're not hidden from him. And if he then uses a bonus action or just on his turn shouts out, hey, the rogue hid over there, then the other guys would also be able to see him. It was really intuitive. It just works that way. The third thing that's wrong with the new hide action is, of course, the invisible condition, which you get when you succeed on your stealth check. You get the invisible condition And because it's a condition, you have it from everyone, not just the enemy that I want to hide from, but everyone. So to unpack this, we need to read the invisible condition once again from Tree and Monk's stream. While you have the invisible condition, you experience the following effects. Surprise, if you're invisible when you roll initiative, you have advantage on the roll. Concealed, you aren't affected by any effect that requires its target to be seen, unless the effect's creator can somehow see you. Any equipment you're wearing or carrying is also concealed. Attacks affected. Attack rolls against you have disadvantage, and your attack rolls have advantage. If a creature can somehow see you, you don't gain this benefit against that creature. So first thing, I have advantage on initiative when I'm invisible, even if the other side can see me. Let's say you have a scenario where we're talking with the ogres by the river. The rogue has hidden off to the side, ready to go if something happens. And then suddenly someone ambushes our party from the other side. The rogue doesn't have any clearer advantage or will not see the enemy before the rest of the party, but because they're hidden from the first ogres or from... It just doesn't make sense. Why do they get advantage on initiative? We already have a clause that says that the new surprise rules, which are actually good, say that you have disadvantage on initiative if you're unaware of combat when it starts. That does make a lot of sense. Anyways, that's a minor thing. A bigger thing is the concealed part. You aren't affected by effects that require me to be seen unless the effects creators can somehow see me. So can my allies target me or not? Because it says somehow see me, so it leaves room for the interpretation that an ally that's right next to me can see me, but it doesn't really tell me that it can. Now, as a DM, I would always rule, of course, your ally can see you, but it's really awkward that the rules don't spell it out for us, or that they create wording that makes it so, like, up in the air. You could interpret it to say that you are invisible, so creatures can't see you, and, well, your allies can't see you either. They can't target you with their spells, even if they can somehow see you. And that really boils down to the point that why does stealth even provide an invisible condition? Because stealth or hiding is by definition not something that happens to you, like turning invisible would be, like literally magically becoming invisible. That's something that physically happens to you, just like poisoned, restrained, grappled, stunned, paralyzed, all these other things. Being hidden is something that is, it's an action, it's an activity you're doing. You can hide from this person over here without hiding from this person over here, because it's all about the vantage point and the senses being used. So applying the invisible condition is a really, 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 really awkward way to do it that just creates so many questions, where for this bullet, the second bullet, conceal, you could just have the rules for spells say a creature you can see. You can target a creature you can see, or have the dragon's attack or whatever special ability say one creature the dragon can see. Oh, wait, they already do that. The spells already say that. The attacks already say that. So why does it need to be in the invisible condition? The invisible condition doesn't need to have that bullet, because all effects and abilities already define whether or not you need to be able to see the target. And if you can't see them because they're hidden, you can't target them. You don't need to write that here and make it very confusing. Moving on from that, you have the attacks affected. Again, same thing, attack rolls against you have disadvantage, and your attack rolls have advantage, but this doesn't apply to creatures that can somehow see you. Once again, under attacks, it could say, and it goes for monsters and players, if you can't see your target, you have disadvantage on the attack roll. If you attack a target that can't see you, you have advantage on your attack rolls. You don't need to have that in some weird invisible condition. It's just in the rules. And I don't have the new attack action in front of me, but I would be surprised if it is probably already there. But if it wasn't, it should be there. And this shouldn't be a thing for the invisible condition, because again, it's really, really confusing. It's just the other way around. You're flipping things on its head and making a condition that isn't really a condition. So to me, that's just weird stuff all around, that we're even using this invisible condition when we're not really invisible, we're just hiding. And that leads us to the last of these 4 points that I have, that the condition ends if we make noise or attack. That kind of makes sense, but not always. But it also ends if an enemy finds me. So first, to just cover if we make noise, cast a spell with a verbal component, do something loud on the whisper. What if the enemies that I'm hiding from can't hear me? I'm by that waterfall. It's very noisy. Could I not just shout to someone else, basically, if the noise is so loud? Or what if my enemies are deafened? What if they can't hear at all? They're in a silent spell or whatever. It's the specification that doesn't need to be specified, or at least if you want to specify things like when does this thing end, you gotta leave room for logical interpretation for the DM. You can't get that specific and say, if you speak louder than a whisper, because it says, it reads as in all cases. Doesn't matter where you're hiding or what you're hiding from. Anyway, that's one thing. It's a scenario that's not going to happen a lot. More importantly, the any enemy finds me thing. This is where it gets weird, because again, we have a hogtied gag goblin that sees me as I sneak past the other goblins. I then lose my invisibility to everyone somehow, even if they are on the other side of the battlefield or around the corner or whatever. How does this make any sense whatsoever? And you could be hiding behind a wall, and an enemy on this side of the wall where you're hiding sees you. You're still hidden from the enemies over here. Doesn't make sense. Anyway, what does it take to find me? The rules, like as we talked about earlier, does that just mean being in your line of sight? Does it mean you have to take the search action to find me? It seems that they need to make the search action. And again, that's pretty weird, because as written, I could maybe just run up to an enemy, broad daylight, and then end my turn. I'm still invisible. They have to search for me, or I have to break my invisibility. If you argue that just going into line of sight of an enemy is gonna make you visible and you break it, or you make an attack or stuff like that, you can sorta get into something where, like, does it mean that my invisibility breaks before I make my attack? Like, I'm popping up from cover to shoot my bow. I get into the enemy's line of sight at that point, arguably. So if you rule that getting in, it's enough to just get into the enemy's line of sight, they don't need to make a search action, I would at that point probably break my invisibility and not have advantage on my attack roll and not get all those benefits, right? We don't know. It's not clarified. It seems so. Maybe, or maybe not. And that's the point. You can argue with me, and you probably will, in the comments that, hey, you're just purposefully misunderstanding the rules, since obviously you just need to use common sense, and obviously this means that, and this means the other thing. And you might even be right. You might be right. But the mere fact that and I've seen dozens of discussions where people take different stances, just the mere fact that we can have these discussions means that the rules are not great. They're poorly designed. And this is very, very disappointing, because they had 10, if you count from the start, years to do this. They had so many years to fix the hide action, fix stealth, make it work, actually. And this is what we got. And even if you read it as favorably as you can, even if you really try to give them the benefit of the doubt and say, hey, this is obviously what they meant, you're still going to have to argue that at the table. You're still going to have situations where you go to the rules to figure something out in terms of stealth, and you're going to be like, yeah, that didn't help. I'll just have to make a ruling. And that means we're right back where we were in 2014. Nothing's better. It might even be worse, because the invisible condition opens up so many weird things where, yeah, it's too much to unpack, but basically, invisible condition is now something that really messes with so many parts of the game that I think is just bad. Anyway, that's the video. That's me whining about the hide action, stealth action. I can't really for the life of me understand what they were thinking with this one, and I'm sorry to the designers if they happen to see this video. No offense meant, nothing personal. This is just really weird, and I wish that you had done it maybe a bit differently. If you, the viewer, would like to maybe see me give a go at making a house rule for the hide action, let me know in the comments down below. And yeah, that's about it. I'll probably make some more videos on the new Player's Handbook as we learn new stuff and I find interesting stuff to talk about. But beyond that, there's not a whole lot left to say, except thank you so much for watching, and I hope that I'll see you in the next video.